Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Sankirtan Ki. My glories be some of the devotees. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 4. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Stiti Vaikuntha Vijaya Poshanam Tadanugraha Manvantarani Saddharma Uttaya Karma Vasanaha Stiti Vaikuntha Vijaya Poshanam Tadanugraha Manvantarani Saddharma Uttaya Karma Vasanaha. So word for word translation, responsibly. Sthiti, the right situation. Vaikuntha Vijaya, the victory of the Lord of Vaikuntha. Poshanam, maintenance. Tad Anugraha, his causeless mercy. Manvatarani, the reign of the Manus. Sat Dharma, perfect occupational duty. Uttaya, impetus to work. Kama Vasana, desire for fruitive work. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is a desire for fruitive work. Purport. This material world is created, maintained for some time, and again annihilated by the will of the Lord. The ingredients for creation and the subordinate creator, Brahma, are first created by Lord Vishnu in his first and second incarnations. The first Purusha incarnation is Mahavishnu, and the second Purusha incarnation is the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, from whom Brahma is created. The third Purusha avatar is the Kishora Dakshaya Vishnu, who lives as a super soul of everything in the universe and maintains creation generated by Brahma. Shiva is one of the many sons of Brahma, and he annihilates the creation. Therefore, the original creator of the universe is Vishnu, and he is also the maintainer of created beings by his causeless mercy. As such, it is the duty of all conditioned souls to acknowledge the victory of the Lord and thus become pure devotees and live peacefully in this world, where miseries and dangers are always in existence. The conditioned souls who take this material creation as a place for satisfaction of the senses and thus illusioned by the external energy of Vishnu, remain again to be subjected to the laws of material nature, creation and destruction. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that beginning from the topmost planet of this universe down to the lowest planet, Pataloka, all are destructible, and the conditioned souls may travel in space either by good or bad work or by modern spacecraft, but they are sure to die everywhere, although the duration of life in different planets is different. The only means to attain eternal life is to go back home, back to Godhead, where there is no more rebirth as in the material planets. The conditioned souls, being unaware of this very simple fact because of forgetting their relationship with the Lord of Vaikuntha, try to plan out a permanent life in this material world. Being illusioned by the external energy, they thus become engaged in various types of economic and religious development, forgetting that they are meant for going back home, back to Godhead. This forgetfulness is so strong due to the influence of Maya that the conditioned souls do not at all want to go back to Godhead. By sense enjoyment, They become victims of birth and death repeatedly, and thus spoil human lives, which are chances for going back to Vishnu. The directive scriptures made by the Manus in different ages and millenniums are called Saddharma, good guidance for the human beings, who should take advantage of all the revealed scriptures for their own interest to make life's successful termination. The creation is not false, but it is a temporary manifestation just to give a chance for the conditioned souls to go back to Godhead. The desire to go back to Godhead and functions performed in that direction form the right path of work. When such a regulative path is accepted, the Lord gives all protection to his devotees by his causeless mercy, while the non-devotees risk their own activities to bind themselves in a chain of fruitive reactions. The word Saddharma is significant in this connection. Saddharma, or duty performed for going back to Godhead and thus becoming his unalloyed devotee, is the only pious activity. All others may pretend to be pious, but actually they are not. It is for this reason only that the Lord advises in the Bhagavad Gita that one give up all so-called religious activities and completely engage in the devotional service of the Lord to become free from all anxieties due to the dangerous life of material existence. To work situated in Saddharma is the right direction of life. One's aim of life should be to go back home, back to Godhead, and not be subjected to repeated births and deaths in the material world by getting good or bad bodies for temporary existence. Herein lies the intelligence of human life, and one should desire the activities of life in that way. So I'll read the translation again. The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the supreme personality of Godhead. The Manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruitive work. So who can remember what the Sanskrit word that's mentioned in the verse that Srila Prabhupada mentions more than once in this purport? Starts with S. Saddharma. And can anyone remember what he says about? Right. So this is our kind of eternal occupation. Very good. So so another good key word in the verse is stitihi, which is the right direction. So this is, we can go in the wrong direction or we can float around or whatever, but our aim is to go in the right direction. If you look on the GPS and you know what you're going in the right way, then you know you're going to get where you need to go. If you decide, I'll just kind of guess, sometimes it works. You know for sure, if you have the right guidance, you're going to go in the right direction. You're going to be in the right situation, and ultimately, even if there's some obstacles upon the path, you'll know that you'll get there. So Saddharma, perfect, is translated as being perfect occupational duty. So to reach perfection in occupational duty is to be engaged in transcendental activities under the right guidance. The other word that's of note is uttaya, which is impetus for work. So we all have, Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita that everyone is natural propensities to serve. So you are either serving your boss, or you're serving your children, or you're serving yourself, or you're serving consumerism, or so it's whether you choose to serve your action, put your activities into a transcendental service, or whether you're going to kind of serve the material energy. So impetus for work, so we are impelled towards some kind of activity. That's just the nature of us. So what impetus, we can have an impetus for work, for fruitive work, and then you'll get fruitive results. And if you have an impetus for transcendental activity, then you'll get eventually transcendental results. the highest platform is to not be aiming for those, but to just have an attitude to serve. But until we're there yet, it's nice to know that there is some reciprocal pleasure from serving. So Srila Prabhupada, he notes that the material world is created, maintained and annihilated, and it's all by the will of the Lord. So while I speak for myself here, but we're walking about, we're doing our business, we're thinking of our goals, our aims, and contemplating that this world, we are part of a bigger world, and this is part of a universe, and this is a material, material world is actually at one time going to be annihilated, and it's being created by the Lord. We're not always thinking that way. So here Srila Prabhupada is reminding us that it's all is coming from the will of the Lord, and just as the material world can be temporary, then also we in a sense are, even though we're eternal, but as in our material existence can be temporary. We may be going from birth to birth into bodies, but different bodies, and we are eternal, but ultimately our existence in this material world can become temporary according to our consciousness and activities. So material world's in a cycle of creation and destruction. So in a sense, it's always in a state of transcendental commotion, and there's a momentum there as well. It's similar to how we are in the momentum of the cycle of birth and death, seemingly never ending, but luckily it's not. So Srila Prabhupada also notes in the purport how Vishnu is the original incarnation. So last chapter was a lot about Lord Brahma and how he was blessed by the Lord because of his attitude and his transcendental penance, and therefore the Lord reciprocated with him, and Brahma creates, but we have to remember that it's only by the will of the Lord, just like we are going about our daily activities and we are making decisions and we are like maintaining our bodies, etc., but ultimately it is done under the control of the Supreme Lord. So ultimately, to put it colloquially, Vishnu is the big boss. He's the one at the top, he's a CEO. So Srila Prabhupada notes that it's actually the duty of the conditioned souls to acknowledge this about Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, and he puts it in a very nice way. He says to acknowledge the victory of Vishnu. So just as Arjuna is glorious for being such a great devotee along with many other devotees, it's nice also to note that Vishnu is victorious. And why is he victorious? Because he is the one that is creating everything, as I just mentioned. He's the one at the top that is orchestrating everything. He also says to become pure devotees and to live peacefully in this world by that acknowledgement of Vishnu and as the victorious one, the ultimate. And in the verse as well also, it talks about how Sat-Dharma is a perfect occupational duty. That's the translation of Sat-Dharma. And then in the verse itself, it talks about having a perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Lord. So this comes when you have pure devotional service. You may have some momentary peace with material consciousness, but when you're a pure devotee, then you have kind of eternal peace of mind. And he says, live peacefully in this world. So that actually is a feat of humankind, to be able to live peacefully, especially at the moment in the state of affairs with the war in Ukraine, and that seems to be in the media at the moment, but there are always wars, and there's always famines, and there's always injustice, and there's always some mother and child that has no food, water, something, or some man that has to go and fight, or women who have to go and fight, or there's poverty, or there's governments that are corrupt. And so to live peacefully in this world requires a certain consciousness. Not only that, as on our personal level, we can be very much disturbed by natural disasters, like the flooding recently has been very traumatic, or disturbs our natural flow, or by other living entities as well, even like bugs, snakes, there's many animals on this farm, or even our own mind we can be disturbed by. So it's a good aim to live peacefully in this world. And do we do it on our own? Well, we can try, but it's actually a big feat to try and control the mind, which is stronger than the wind. But with proper guidance, we can. So it's our duty as conditioned souls, or I speak for myself, to remember Vishnu and Vishnu's authority, and to remember the glory of his infinitely amazing activities. And even just due to the fact we cannot understand it completely, I cannot understand how, I can't even visualize, and I'm kind of a visual person, how the material universe can be created, or even just, it's souls, how souls are going from body to body. I recently had to go to Brisbane in a kind of mad rush to get my passport renewed, and I had to spend a day kind of going in and out of the passport office while they were working on my case and stuff. And so I had to spend a lot of time in the city, and I really noticed that there's really not much to do in the city, really. I guess if you know someone, it's a bit different, but people were walking back and forth, and it's a lot of shopping, a lot of smoking, a lot of cars, big buildings. And I think maybe because I've been on the farm some time now, but it just is a hive of activity, but it seems slightly without purpose. I'm sure if I spoke to these individual people that I saw in the street, then they have purpose. But for me, as a overview, I felt that there was no occupation, no sense of purpose, and it was kind of like the Band-Aid effect. You put the Band-Aid on to make it a little better, but ultimately the wound has to heal itself. So they're not knowing what to do, so they're shopping, lots of shopping. It seems that's what you do in the city. Or I guess people are working as well, and then rushing, and then it's for what in the end? Not that there's anything wrong with working or eating, or sometimes shopping, but it's very, very busy, and I didn't see a lot of peace there actually. And often I go on Harinam Sankirtan, and that's right in the city, and you're right in the heart of this busyness, and it's different then because people are often partying or at the beach. But when you're chanting there amidst it all, then it's a little different from when you're just have something to do in the city and you can see. So I didn't see a lot of peace. I saw a lot of busyness and a lot of just momentum going and going and going and going and going, and I just wonder how far we can go like that. So hence Srila Prabhupada, he talks about having a greater aim in this world. He notes indeed that in this world, miseries and dangers are always present, and someone might think, well, actually, life is good, if some people don't go through traumas or don't make big mistakes and stuff, and so why is this misery and danger? It's a little bit rough, Why is there misery and dangers in this world? It's because it's inevitable. Some people have karma that they've gained, good karma that they've gained from previous lives, but eventually, unless you engage yourself in spiritual activities, then it will dry up, and then the miseries will come, which is quite grim. And then the happiness will come. Sukha dukkha, I think it's called chapala sukha, I think, the flickering happiness. And I guess for some, this flickering happiness can go for some time, but eventually it's got to end, whereas internal happiness is forever lasting. So the conditioned souls are taking place in the material world purely for sense gratification. It's the satisfaction of the senses, and they're illusioned. And this isn't like that everyone's going around thinking, I just want to gratify myself. It's a subtle choice. like that we all make by what we choose to do with our actions. Because we do have free will, and that's it kind of is what makes Krishna also not come cheap. Like, if he wanted to, he could, I'm sure he could have us come to him, but instead maybe perhaps he would like us to see, like find our own way a little bit with realizing the laws of material nature and why we don't want to kind of why we can think outside of ourselves and our own enjoyment. The conditioned soul is subject to the laws of material nature, creation and destruction. So even that point is a point to help us to become humble. I don't know if you guys notice, but I do a lot of walking around the farm. I don't know if you notice that there's lots of toads on the roads, and it's really quite not really pleasant when you're walking. And every day, like when I go to walk to the Gurukul, there's a new toad on the road, and it's dramatic, like it's like a carnage, like they've been squished. When you're in the car, no one notices really, right? You're driving along, but there's all of these toads every day. They change bodies like that. And it's just like the destruction will just come so quickly, you just can't even control it. So we're subject to these laws similarly, just like the toad, we're also subject to the laws in different ways. We're all going to die. The whole, the kind of a message I got from this purport was, we are going to die, and of course we are eternal, we're going to change bodies, but in the material world things destruct, and our body eventually destructs as well, unless, most of us will enter into old age when things don't work as well anymore. Sometimes it's the mind that goes, the body is good, but the mind goes. Or sometimes it's the mind that's okay, but the body won't work. So we cannot avoid that. We can be young as well. At sometimes we are young and beautiful, handsome. But true beauty, is when someone is, I believe, very kind of rightly situated in their devotion, and then it doesn't matter what kind of body you have, because it comes from inside. So it's said in the Bhagavad Gita that the beginning from the topmost planet of this universe down to the lowest planet, all are destructible. And Srila Prabhupada writes that the conditioned soul may travel in space, either by good or bad work, or by modern spacecraft, but they are sure to die everywhere, although the duration of life in different planets is different. So you might live for 100 million years or something, but still in a different planet, but still eventually you're going to have to die, change bodies. How do we get out of that? By having the right aim. So if you have the aim to go to Goloka Vrindavan, so if you change your mood from your desire for material success, to desiring to go to Goloka Vrindavan, then therefore you can be free from this cycle of birth and death. So what does it mean to desire to go in Goloka Vrindavan? We go to Vrindavan, and you can go shopping in Lloyd Bazaar. You can see Radha Raman, you can see Krishna Balaram. Where is our mind when we go there? I speak for myself, but sometimes are we in Goloka Vrindavan? What is Goloka Vrindavan like? Every day when we dress the deities, we say a prayer about Vrindavandam and how it's decorated with jewels and millions of suns, I think it is, and how there's a jeweled throne where Radha and Krishna sit. And just reading that verse, the translation reminds me how much we don't know about Goloka Vrindavan, or I speak for myself. So even though we don't know, it's just the idea that we can be free from this material existence is enough to inspire us to go. It's okay that we don't know exactly. If we experience Goloka Vrindavan, then maybe we wouldn't have the problem of knowing why we want to go there. But just the idea of just being free from this incessant cycle of material life and death and flickering happiness and is enough, no, to want to go. So it's not some kind of light thing actually to think about that idea of going back home, that it's actually quite, very deep. So because conditioned souls, like myself, have forgotten this, then we try to plan out our permanent life in this material world. So we all have our plans. I have my plans. I've been planning to go travelling and face some obstacles, and we may have our plans of how it's going to be and put a lot of energy and endeavour into it, but ultimately it's up to Krishna. My spiritual master, His Holiness Kadamba Swami, he says that you may have your ticket to go to Vrindavan, but actually it's Radharani's mercy. And it's very true. You can have all the money in the world. There's people who have all the money in the world, but they don't even know about Vrindavan or that they have a soul. So it's kind of what you do. I once had the experience where I went to go to the Dham with some devotees, my first trip, and I had a desire to go to Vrindavan. I wanted to go to Vrindavan first, and then we went to Mayapur, which I loved. And then it got to the point where they went in different directions. Like I went to stay in Mayapur, we went to Puri, and then I had to catch a plane back to Mayapur to study Bhakti Shastri, and they all went to Vrindavan. And I was like, okay, so I haven't quite yet been blessed to go to Vrindavan. It wasn't the right time. I wasn't qualified. That's how I see it. And then I ended up going back to Vrindavan another time and staying there, and living there. And every time there was an opportunity to go to Vrindavan, I would try to, and it just wouldn't work. Like I didn't have the right money. I didn't have the right association. It just didn't have the means to go. But I really wanted to. So I'd see people come and go. And then one monsoon, there was a big flood, huge flood, the Ganga Flood, Mother Ganga Flood. It says actually, like if you see from a material perspective, people say, well, the government doesn't, they're supposed to let the water out sometimes, so that's why it floods. But from a transcendental perspective, it's like Mother Ganga is coming to take darshan of the deities. So I decided to stay during this flood, thinking that I'll just stay there. I was looking after someone's house, and then I was just sure that I was just going to stay. And then the flood water started rising, and somehow or other, someone encouraged me to go to Vrindavan instead, or no, to go to Calcutta. And so I had to walk through all the flood waters with my bag and get to the trains. It was a whole thing. I didn't have anywhere to stay, and luckily by the mercy of the devotees it worked out. And somehow or other, then it just eventuated that I stayed with this lovely devotee in Calcutta with a family. And I got to know her name was Neha, and I expressed my desire that I wanted to go to Vrindavan, and it never seemed to work. And she took me to this businessman who was interested in Krishna consciousness, and so we sold him a Bhagavad Gita, and then he decided that he wanted to buy my train ticket to Vrindavan. And not only that, he decided that he was going to do first class to Vrindavan. So it's a bit of a long story, but so I really made an impression on me that when it's the right time and Radharani will bless you, then you will go and it will be smooth. And then when I arrived in Vrindavan, I always had a desire, because in Upadeshamrita, Srila Prabhupada writes about how going to Radha Kund with the blessings of your spiritual master. And I always thought that when I went to the Dham, that it would be only like it would be best if it was under the direction of my spiritual master, and then somehow or other he was there at that time, and we all did parikram for like, I think it was like 5 days. We went to all the places, Radhakund, we did Abhishek at Govardhan. So it's just like interesting like that when Krishna blesses you and Guru and Gauranga and Radharani, then there is no restriction, whereas when we try our own plan, we can come across obstacles. I just want to say another story in relation to this. I went with a family member to Govardhan at a different time. We went to Vrindavan, and I wanted to take them on parikram at Govardhan. We went to Tulsi Devi's, Vrindakund. We went to Krishna Balaram Mandir. But when we had a taxi driver who wasn't a devotee, but anyway, that my family member had bought it, and then we went to Govardhan, and then he went to the town, because that must have been what was on his GPS. So we were asking around, because I'm not particularly familiar with the area. We'd like to do parikram around Govardhan Hill. He was asking all the locals, everything. They kept on taking us to this temple that was right in the middle of the town, Govardhan. But we couldn't get to Govardhan itself, like it just wasn't manifesting. And this taxi driver, he was speaking to them in a language they understood, and he was looking, and it just wasn't meant to be, and that really made an impression on me. And many other times people just land themselves there by accident, or you can easily get like transport there. So it's really the mercy of the Lord and where you are in your like consciousness to what happens. So when Srila Prabhupada is talking about us forgetting us and us trying to plan out our permanent life in this material world, and he says permanent life, so we're thinking we're going to have this house forever, we're going to be in this body forever, we're going to, all the things we put in place are going to be there forever, but it's actually futile. It's quite silly really if you think about it. I think. He also mentions that material creation is not false. So when we're influenced by Maya, we are an illusion, but it doesn't mean that material creation is false. It's not. It's created actually to give a chance for the conditioned souls to go back to Godhead. So even though it feels like a terrible place at times, it's actually his causeless mercy, which is written in the verses Tat Anugraha in this case. So it's Kripa, it's mercy. Why is it mercy? Well, it's because he's giving us a space to work things out, I guess, and to come to our own understanding and make choices so that we can go on the right path of Saddharma. Sometimes children at the school, they flip out about stuff, and then they can't, they need space if they're having a tantrum or something. It doesn't happen often, but they need a little bit of space. But so the very small ones. So sometimes you have to give them the space, but you still need to make sure that they're okay. And you need to let them know that you're there, but just have the space to and then when they're ready, they come back. And it's feels a little bit like that. Like we're in material creation because we need to work it out because we want to be here ultimately, that's why. But it's not like Krishna is gone from here. And the Lord is still looking out for us, and it's still, the mercy is still there. And when we come back to class, then with the right consciousness, then the reciprocation can be greater. But in the meantime, the love is still there. It's not gone away. So Srila Prabhupada, my last note I would like to say is that Srila Prabhupada also notes that we have to have the desire to go back to Godhead, as I mentioned, and it's not something that comes instantly, or not for me anyway, and how we do that is through performing sadhana bhakti on a regulative path, and it's not at all dry. It's especially when you delve into the wonderful world of Shastra, then it becomes very enlivening. Or if you go on Harinam Sankirtan also. But this regulative path, when you're on the regulative path, then Srila Prabhupada says that you'll be given all protection. So Krishna is going to be there at every moment. So we can act in a way where our transcendental desires or our aspirations for transcendental desires can bear transcendental fruits, or we can act in a way where our material desires will bear material fruits of material, like happiness and distress, which will bind us. So it's about using our free will to make the choice. And how do we use our free will? Do we wake up one day and say, okay, Krishna, I've decided that I choose you? I mean, that's very good. but material energy is very strong. Our condition is very strong. We change our desire when we communicate our desire by the choices in our actions. And it's not about negating a whole lot of things, but it's rather about developing the taste for transcendental things and finding the joy in that. And therefore then the other things will slowly fall away, and it won't be like we have to tie ourselves in knots naturally, and through good association, when you see someone else enjoying those things, and just enjoying service, whatever it may be. I recently had the experience where I was rostered to wash the pots for the temple, and my ego went wild, at first. And then I actually started to enjoy it. I mean, there is the element of physically, it's quite hard to do something like that if you don't have the, physically I do find it hard, and it was just a transfer trays, but it was actually such a good lesson, to find, thinking, well, I'm a pujari, I don't have time, for this, and I didn't have a lot of time, but these are Krishna's pots, and it's not only that, it's for the devotees, and so it was a good lesson for checking myself. Of course, there is the matter of, if you can physically do it or not, but then I guess the true pure devotees, then they will give even their body to these kinds of things. I'll stop there. If anyone has any questions, comments or corrections, you're welcome to do so. Okay. Hare Krishna.